Hello everyone, this is Maximus and I'm going to be presenting a step-by-step slideshow about how I got iPod integration and an auxiliary input into my 2005 Volvo S40 2.4i. As many as you know, the 2005 Volvo S40 did not come with any type of auxiliary input for the audio. So this meant using FM modulators in order to hear my Sirius satellite radio or iPod over my car speakers. In a city environment, this did not work too great because it was pretty hard to find a unused FM station to broadcast over. So it meant dealing with a lot of static and whatnot. I'm going to show you a step-by-step about how I installed a Dension Gateway 500 unit to achieve iPod integration into my vehicle. So I'm going to break this up into a few parts. In part 1, I'll do just a basic unboxing of the unit and give a brief overview of the product and how about some accessories I bought along the way for the install. In part 2, I'll go into tapping into the passenger compartment fuse box to get power to the unit. And in part 3, I'll go through the installation of the Dension Gateway 500 by showing how I removed the in-dash display, wired it, etc. So hopefully each part is helpful in some way. Let's begin with part 1. Here are all the components that come with the Dension Gateway 500. It's a good idea to get familiar with all of these items to formulate how you want to install it in your car. Here we have the auxiliary input module. As you can see, you have a left and a right RCA input. These inputs will let you connect any audio source into your car speakers. I'm planning on utilizing this for my satellite radio, as well as a cell phone connection so I can play Pandora music over my car speakers. Additionally, there is a mode selector switch. This switch tells your car to use the stock CD changer or the Gateway 500. A quick note here is that when you bring your car in for service, make sure this switch is in the CD changer mode. Otherwise, the onboard computer for the car might give some funky readouts to the technician working on it. Okay, moving on. Here we have the power harness for the device. This is what is going to bring power from the passenger compartment fuse box to the Dension unit. Here is a close-up of the built-in 10 amp fuse on the wiring harness. Next, here is the accessory pack. This contains different sized mounts for different sized iPods. I didn't use any of these because I decided just to keep my iPod on the passenger seat next to me, but to each his own. Here we have the iPod connector. This is the standard iPod connector. This will plug into iPods, iPhones, and iPads. The white connector is a little bit thicker, so cases may interfere with the plug. This orange plug is what is going to plug into the Gateway 500, shown here with some optional adhesive mounting pads. The next few slides I'll show you different inputs and outputs on the Gateway 500. Shown here from left to right, you have your power harness input, your USB input, which is for running songs off a memory stick or updating firmware. Then you have the two analog looking inputs. The first one is where the orange iPod connector would plug into, and the second one is not utilized. And then last, you have the 8-pin connector, which is where the auxiliary input module plugs into. This is what was shown previously with the RCA left and right inputs and the mode selector switch. Here's a shot of the nameplate on the bottom of the unit. There you can see the dip switches. The manual shows all the different configurations for the switches. As per the manual, I've already set it up for my Volvo S40 install with switches 1, 4, and 6 in the on position. Here's another angle. You can see the mounting ears for securing the unit with the included screws. I didn't use the screws, but it's an option. Here are the fiber optic harness input outputs for the unit. The left port is what is going to be utilized in this install. This is where the fiber optic cables will connect to. More on this later. As you can see, the box is pretty small. I have pretty big hands, but the unit is about 4 or 5 inches long and 3 inches wide with a thickness about 1 inch. Here are the fiber optic wires and various connectors. Being that they're fiber optic, you want to be careful not to overbend them. Here's a shot of the connectors at the ends of the fiber optic cables. You can see they come pre-labeled car side and CDC side, or CD changer side. Here's a close-up of what they look like. This is the opposite ends of the cables. And here's a bunch of extra connectors and a splice unit on the lower left. Moving on to the other packages that come with the Gateway 500. You have the USB extension cable, a mounting bracket for the USB cable, and some screws, and a cover plate if you decide to drill through your glove box or something. I didn't use any of these components because I don't plan on playing music off a USB memory stick, but if you decide to, then here are the components. And of course, there are instruction manuals, which you can find on Dension's website if you care to read through them prior to buying the unit. They give you a pretty generic install process, but some good reference info. Again, here is the unit showing all the different inputs I went through. Here in the directions is the install guide, which shows you how to install the Dension 500 in a Volvo S40 or V50 for model years 2004 through 2007 that do not already have auxiliary inputs but do have a CD changer. You can see here that we're in essence going to create a loop in the car's audio fiber optic system. At the top you can see the Dension unit. The Dension unit is going to output to the car speakers, which are represented in that bubble. You can see the light passes through a splicer, which I showed you earlier. The directions show how to install the splicer. The loop continues and heads to the bottom right where you got the Volvo display unit or ICM, and then it heads back up through that loop-de-loop to the Dension unit. Now, I did a whole lot of reading about this unit prior to dropping a couple $100 on it. So in scouring the various forums about this thing, I came across a diagram somebody drew up, and I apologize I didn't write the name down, so I'm sorry I can't give credit where credit is due. Either way, I found that this diagram was a lot more helpful than the included directions. I orientated it this way to show you how it would be if you were sitting in your car. At the top, you have the connector coming from the car speakers, which you would find when you pull out the ICM display from your dash. You got the Dension unit there on your right, and the car's display unit at the bottom. It's all pretty simple. Again, this is the diagram that I found most useful. As I said, I did do a lot of research on this, and I found that the current Dension unit, which is sold, cannot charge one of the newer generation iPods or iPhones or the iPad. I believe it starts at the 3GS, has a different voltage to charge. So if you want the Dension unit to be able to charge your device, you need to get this power booster. It's called the Dension Power Booster IP-B1DIN. This is pretty simple plug and play. You connect the orange plug from the iPod cable to the back end here. Then plug the power booster in line with the gateway power harness with these two connectors. The black male connector and the green connector down on the table there will plug into the Dension unit, just as it's shown here. A few other things that I picked up from my install was this mini fuse add-a-line. This will take a nice clean tap from an existing circuit in my passenger compartment fuse panel. It's important for the Volvo S40 to get the ATM style version of this add-a-line. The add-a-line that I bought requires two fuses to work, the existing circuit fuse and a fuse for the new device it's going to power. Therefore, I picked up a 2-pack of 10 amp mini fuses or ATM fuses. I chose a 10 amp because that's the size of the fuse already installed on the Dension power harness. This concludes part 1 of the unboxing of the Gateway 500 unit. Keep an eye out for part 2 where I'm going to go into tapping into the passenger compartment fuse box on my Volvo S40 so we can get power to this unit. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.